Welcome to Devotionary, where we make the Bible accessible and applicable. At the end of chapter 33, Moses made the compelling confession, "There is no one like the God of Israel." He wanted the people to know that they served a great and incomparable God. But at the same time, the author of the book of Deuteronomy seems to want his readers to know that Moses was also unparalleled and without equal. There has never been another prophet in Israel like Moses, he writes. Moses was flawed, yet faithful. He could be stubborn and hard-headed, and yet he never stopped believing in and relying upon God. Now his day of reckoning has arrived, and he will go to be with God. There will be no promised land in Moses' future, but there will be an eternity spent in fellowship with God. And while Moses would disappear from the scene, the people of Israel would find themselves guided by another one of God's chosen servants, because he was not yet done with them. But that's another story. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, all the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the Negeb, and the plain, that is, the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. And the Lord said to him, "This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to your offspring. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not go over there." So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows the place of his burial to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was undimmed, and his vigor unabated. And the people of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were ended. And Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the people of Israel obeyed him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. And there has not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, none like him for all the signs and the wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. Deuteronomy 34, verses 1 through 12. The fateful day finally arrived. Moses had known for some time that he would never cross over the Jordan or walk in the land of Canaan. He had spent more than 40 years of his 120-year-long life leading the people of Israel to the land of promise, but he would never set foot in the land. He had sinned against God and would pay the consequences for that sin. Now that time had come. As the people of Israel prepared to enter Canaan, God led Moses up to the top of Mount Nebo, located in the plains of Moab. From that vantage point, the Lord showed him all the land, from Dan in the north to the Dead Sea in the south. Directly across the valley, Moses would have seen the area on which the temple would later be erected by Solomon. His unobstructed view from the mountaintop would have given him a bird's-eye perspective of the land promised by God to Abraham. And as Moses scanned the horizon, he was reminded by God, "This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to your offspring. I have let you see it with your eyes." Deuteronomy 34, verse 4. God had fulfilled his promise. He had done what he had said he would do. Now he was allowing Moses to take it all in, but he would not allow Moses to go in. "But you shall not go over there." Deuteronomy 34, verse 4. What an emotional moment this must have been for Moses, to stand gazing into the vast valley that lay before him, realizing that he was looking at the fulfillment of a nearly half-century of toil and effort on his part. From the moment God had called him in Midian and assigned him the task of rescuing the people of Israel out of slavery in Egypt, Moses had done all that God had asked him to do. Sure, he had displayed a bit of reluctance early on, doubting that the people of Israel would buy his explanation that God, Yahweh, had sent him as their deliverer. "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, 'The Lord did not appear to you.'" Exodus 4, verse 1. So God had given Moses tangible proof that the people would listen to what he had to say. He performed a sign, a somewhat disturbing and disconcerting sign. God turned Moses' shepherd's staff into a snake, and then commanded that he pick it up by the tail. When Moses did as God commanded, the snake transformed back into a staff. But God was not done. He commanded that Moses place his hand inside his cloak. Much to his shock and dismay, Moses removed his hand, only to find that it was covered with leprosy. Yet God miraculously restored it. But even with these miraculous signs as proof, Moses questioned his own qualifications to act as God's spokesman. "O Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Exodus 4, verse 10. At this point, Moses was making excuses. He was doing everything in his power to get out of the task God had assigned to him. But God wasn't interested in Moses' qualifications. His choice of Moses wasn't based on anything this former murderer and fugitive from justice could bring to the table. God didn't ask Moses to be eloquent or powerful. He didn't pick Moses based on his impressive resume or track record as a leader. When God appeared to Moses, it was in the middle of Midian, where Moses had been leading sheep, not men. So God assured Moses that he didn't need him to be charismatic or persuasive. He simply needed him to be obedient. Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. Exodus 4, verses 12 through 13. But Moses had displayed a stubborn resistance to God's will, begging that he find someone else to do this impossible task. "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else." Exodus 4, verse 13. But God didn't let Moses off the hook. Instead, he gave Moses an assistant, someone who would walk alongside him and share the burden of leadership with him. God added Aaron, Moses' brother, to the team. "You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him." Exodus 4, verses 15 through 16. These two men became God's reluctant deliverers. Together they would confront Pharaoh and demand that he release the people of Israel from their slavery. Together they would call down the plagues upon the nation of Egypt, bringing about the eventual release of the Israelites. Together they would lead the people across the wilderness, and together they would dishonor God before the people and suffer the consequences for their actions. Years earlier, Aaron had been led by God to the top of another mountain, Mount Hor, where his life was taken by God. He was not allowed to enter the land of promise either. "Let Aaron be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land that I have given to the people of Israel, because you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son. And Aaron shall be gathered to his people, and shall die there." Numbers 20, verses 24 through 26. And now Moses was standing on the top of Mount Nebo, where he would experience the very same fate as his brother Aaron. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord, and he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows the place of his burial to this day. Deuteronomy 34, verses 5 through 6. There's a great deal of mystery surrounding the death of Moses, and the book of Jude makes it even more difficult to understand exactly what happened. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." Jude, verse 9. We have no idea what this passage means or to what Jude was referring to, but suffice it to say, Moses disappeared from the scene, and no one knows the place of his burial to this day. Moses died at a ripe old age, but his eye was undimmed and his vigor unabated. In other words, he was in good health when God took him home, and his departure made way for Joshua to take over the reins of leadership. And Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the people of Israel obeyed him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. Deuteronomy 34, verse 9. A new era was beginning, but God closed out the legacy of Moses with the following words: "No prophet ever again arose in Israel like Moses, who knew the Lord face to face. He did all the signs and wonders the Lord had sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh, all his servants, and the whole land. And he displayed great power and awesome might in view of all Israel." Deuteronomy 34, verses 10 through 12. Moses received God's good housekeeping seal of approval. He had walked with God. He had done signs and wonders on behalf of God, and he had done it all in the power of God. Moses had been called by God, led by God, empowered by God, and ultimately taken home by God. He had served his master well, and there's little doubt that Moses heard these comforting words, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." Matthew 25, verse 23.